It was a calm morning in a small town where Amir and his wife Sana lived in a cozy house near the edge of a quiet street. Birds were singing outside and a soft breeze moved through the trees. Inside the house, the air was filled with a new kind of joy. After months of waiting, Amir and Sana had brought their newborn baby girl home. Her name was Aisha. She was small, warm and beautiful, and when she smiled, her whole face lit up like a tiny ray of sunshine. Amir stood by the window, looking at his wife as she gently held their baby in her arms. He felt proud and grateful. Becoming a father had changed everything for him. He wanted to protect this little life more than anything in the world. In the corner of the room, on a soft rug, lay 3 small puppies that Amir had rescued some months ago. He had found them near an empty park on a cold night. They were hungry and weak. Amir had taken them home and given them milk and a place to sleep. Since then, they had become part of the family. Each puppy was different in nature. Bruno was the brave one, always alert and strong. Layla was calm and loving, always staying near whoever needed comfort. Max was the smallest and most curious, always sniffing new things and wagging his tail. When the baby arrived, Amir worried about how the puppies would react. He feared they might bark too much or feel jealous because the attention would now go to the baby. But to his surprise, the first time the puppies saw Aisha, their behavior changed completely. Sana placed the baby in her small crib. The puppies stood quietly and watched from a distance. Their eyes followed every small movement of the baby. They did not bark or move. They seemed to understand that this little human was something precious. Then Bruno slowly walked closer to the crib, sniffed the air, and sat beside it. Layla came next and curled up near him. Max, the smallest one, lay near the baby's feet, resting his head on the edge of the crib. Sana watched them closely. "Amir, look at this," she said with a small smile. "They are so calm. I think they already love her." Amir nodded. "It's strange but sweet," he replied. "It feels like they are protecting her." From that day on, the puppies seemed to take their new role seriously. Wherever the baby went, they followed. When Sana carried Aisha to the bedroom to feed her, the 3 little dogs trotted behind quietly. When the baby was rocked to sleep, they would sit under the cradle as if guarding her dreams. At first, Amir and Sana found it adorable. Visitors would laugh and say how lucky the baby was to have 3 small guardians. But after some days, Amir began to notice something different. The puppies were not just staying near the baby for affection. They refused to leave her side, even for food or playtime. Usually, Bruno, Layla, and Max would run to the kitchen as soon as Amir filled their bowls. But now, even when he called them, they stayed near the baby. They watched the crib with serious expressions, their ears standing straight as if listening for something invisible. Amir thought maybe they were just adjusting to the new sounds and smells of the baby. But their behavior became more intense each day. At night, when everyone was asleep, the puppies stayed awake, their eyes fixed on the crib. If the baby cried, they barked softly to alert the parents. One night, Amir tried to move them out of the room. He thought they needed rest. "Come on, Bruno, Layla, Max," he said softly. "Go to your bed now." Bruno looked up but did not move. Layla whimpered and pressed closer to the crib. Max stood between Amir and the baby, shaking his small tail nervously. Amir sighed and picked Max up, but the puppy squirmed and jumped back to the same spot. Sana, who had just finished feeding Aisha, watched with concern. "Maybe they feel something," she said quietly. "Feel what?" Amir asked. "I don't know," she said. "Animals can sense things we cannot." Amir smiled weakly, trying to ignore the uneasy feeling that began to rise in his chest. He believed there was no reason to worry. Their house was safe. It was an old house, yes, but it was clean and peaceful. Still, the strange behavior of the puppies made him wonder. The next morning, when Amir went to work, the puppies again stayed near the baby. Sana tried to make them move, but they refused. She decided to let them be, thinking it was harmless. The house stayed quiet through the day until evening came. When Amir returned home, he noticed the puppies were acting strange again. They were sitting near the baby, staring at the same spot on the wall behind the crib. Their tails were still and their bodies were tense. Amir frowned. "What's wrong with them now?" he asked. Sana shook her head. "I don't know. They keep looking at that wall like they see something." Amir walked closer and placed his ear near the wall. At first there was nothing but silence. Then he thought he heard a faint sound, like a soft scratch or whisper. It was so low he almost thought he imagined it. He straightened up quickly. Maybe it's just mice, he said. But the look in the puppy's eyes told him they sensed more than that. Bruno gave a low growl, deep and serious. Layla stood up and sniffed the air. Max hid behind Bruno but kept his eyes open. That night, Amir could not sleep well. The sound behind the wall came again, this time a little clearer. It was a slow, repeating noise, as if something was moving behind the baby's room. He sat up, listening carefully. The puppies were awake too, staring at the same wall. Amir got out of bed and walked to the baby's room. The air felt colder there. He saw the 3 puppies sitting in a line beside the crib, guarding the baby, their eyes shining in the dim light. The baby slept peacefully, unaware of anything around her. Suddenly, Amir heard a small thump inside the wall. The morning sun rose slowly over the sea. Ravi opened his eyes and sat up. His body hurt from sleeping on the hard ground and his clothes were still damp. The air was cold, but the golden sunlight warmed his face a little. He listened to the sound of the waves and the birds calling from the trees. For a few moments, he forgot where he was. Then it all came back. The storm, the lost tent, the missing food, and the empty island. He took a deep breath and told himself, I'm still alive. That means I can still survive. Ravi knew he needed water, food, and shelter. Without these, he would not last long. He drank the little coconut water he had left and decided to search for more. The island was green and he hoped to find fruit or a stream. He used a stick as a walking pole and began to move into the forest. The forest was thick, filled with tall trees, vines, and ferns. The ground was wet and small insects buzzed around him. Every sound made him alert. He walked carefully, looking for anything useful. After a while, he heard the soft sound of running water. He followed it and found a small stream flowing between rocks. The water looked clear and fresh. He cupped his hands and drank slowly. It was cold and pure, and it gave him new strength. He decided to stay near the stream. It was a good source of water, and there were trees nearby for shade. He could also see the beach from there, so if any boat came, he could run out quickly. Ravi started collecting dry branches and leaves to make a stronger shelter. He found a few long sticks and placed them in a triangle shape against a rock. He covered them with large leaves to block the wind and rain. It was not a perfect hut, but it gave him comfort. Next, he thought about food. His stomach had been empty since yesterday. He remembered the coconuts near the beach and decided to find more. On his way back, he saw a few banana trees with small green fruits. They were not ripe, but he took them anyway. He also found some wild berries, but he was careful not to eat them before testing. He rubbed a few on his hand first and waited. When nothing happened, he tasted one slowly. It was sour but safe. As the sun rose higher, the heat increased. Ravi used his shirt to carry coconuts and bananas back to his shelter. He cracked open a coconut using a sharp rock and ate the soft white inside. It was not much, but it stopped his hunger for a while. He felt proud of himself for finding food and water. In the afternoon, he walked along the beach to look for any sign of people or boats. He waved a long stick in the air, but there was no one. He shouted, but the wind carried his voice away. Still, he did not lose hope. He thought of making a signal fire. If he kept some dry wood ready, he could light it quickly when a ship or plane passed by. He started collecting dry branches and arranged them in a small pile near the open part of the beach. He used the lighter that had somehow stayed safe in his pocket. When he tried it, a small flame appeared. He smiled in relief. He carefully lit the dry leaves, and soon a small fire burned. The smoke rose into the sky. Ravi watched it with hope. Maybe someone would see it. He sat near the fire and thought about his situation. 2 days were supposed to be enough, but now it felt like a lifetime. The storm had changed everything. He did not know if the fishermen could return or even if anyone knew he was missing. He looked at the sea, which looked peaceful again, hiding all signs of the danger it had caused. As the day passed, Ravi used the time to learn about his surroundings. He walked slowly around the edge of the island. He found many types of plants and small animals like crabs and lizards. He caught a few crabs using a stick and carried them back. He roasted them carefully over the fire. The taste was strange, but it gave him energy. At sunset, he sat by the water. The sky turned red and gold. The waves glowed with the color of the sun. Even though he was alone, he felt a quiet peace inside. The island looked beautiful when it was calm, but he knew it could turn wild again any time. When darkness came, Ravi went inside his small shelter. He used dry leaves as bedding. The night was cooler than before, and the sound of insects filled the air. He stared at the roof of his shelter, thinking about his life. He had never felt this close to nature before. Every sound, every smell, and every breath felt stronger. He realized how much people depend on things they take for granted. Food, clean water, warm beds, and lights. Out here, even a single dry leaf or a drop of water felt precious. In the middle of the night, he woke up when he heard a noise outside. It sounded like something moving through the bushes. He sat up, heart pounding. He picked up his stick and listened. The sound came closer. He held his breath. Then a small animal jumped out, a wild boar, small but fast. It looked at him for a second and ran away. Ravi let out a sigh of relief. He was not in danger, but now he knew he had to be more careful. The next morning, he felt a little stronger. His body had started to adjust. He washed his face in the stream and decided to explore the other side of the island. Maybe there was something useful there. The path was hard, filled with rocks and roots. He moved slowly, using his stick to balance. After walking for some time, he reached a higher point from where he could see the whole island. It was smaller than he thought. He saw green forests, white beaches, and blue water all around. There was no sign of people or houses. He was truly alone. Still, he noticed something interesting. On the far side of the island, near a cliff, there was a group of strange rocks arranged in a circle. They did not look natural. He decided to check them. When he reached there, he saw they were man-made, maybe remains of an old camp or an ancient site. In the middle, he found pieces of broken glass and some old metal parts. That meant someone had been here before long ago. He searched the area carefully. Under a pile of stones, he found a rusty knife. It was old, but still sharp enough to cut branches and coconuts. He smiled with joy. It felt like finding treasure. This knife could help him in many ways. He cleaned it with water and tied it to his waist using a piece of cloth. When he returned to his shelter, the sun was already setting. He sat near the fire, cutting a few bananas into slices and roasting them slowly. The smell made him hungry. He ate quietly, watching the stars appear one by one. As the night grew darker, he thought again about the fisherman who had promised to return. Maybe the storm had delayed him. Maybe he would come tomorrow. But deep inside, Ravi also knew he must be ready to live here longer if no one came. He had survived 2 days already. He could survive more if he stayed calm and strong. Before sleeping, he looked at the sea once again. The waves glowed faintly under the moonlight. He felt both small and powerful at the same time. Alone, but not broken, he whispered softly, "I will make it. I will not give up." Then he lay down inside his small shelter, the sound of the forest around him. The stars shone above like tiny lamps in the sky. Ravi closed his eyes, ready for another day of survival on the lost island. The third morning on the island began with a soft light spreading across the sea. The waves rolled gently and the sky glowed pale gold. Ravi woke up early. His body felt sore, but his spirit was stronger than before. He had survived 2 long days with no help, and that gave him courage. He washed his face in the stream and sat for a moment listening to the forest. The chirping of birds, the rustle of leaves, and the sound of water made the place feel alive. Still, he knew he could not relax too much. He had to stay alert. The island looked peaceful, but it could change at any time. After eating a few pieces of roasted banana and drinking water, he decided to explore deeper into the forest. He wanted to find better tools or more food. He also wanted to study the strange stone circle he had seen the day before. Something about it stayed in his mind. It did not feel like a natural part of the island. Ravi took his stick and the old rusty knife he had found. He followed a new path through thick trees. The air was damp and the smell of earth filled his nose. Sunlight passed through the leaves in bright lines. Every step made small sounds under his feet. After walking for about an hour, he found more fruit trees. Some had green mangoes, while others had round yellow fruits. He collected what he could carry and tied them in his shirt. Then he saw a narrow trail leading upward. He followed it, hoping to get a higher view of the island. The path climbed between rocks and tall grass. When he reached the top, he could see far across the ocean. It was beautiful but also empty. No boat, no ship, no sign of people anywhere. A soft wind touched his face. He sighed, feeling both lonely and calm at the same time. While resting, his eyes fell on something unusual. Between 2 big rocks, there was a dark opening. It looked like a small cave, half hidden by plants. Curiosity pushed him forward. He cleared the vines and looked inside. The air from the cave was cool and smelled old. He took a stick, tied dry grass to its end, and lit it with his lighter. The small flame helped him see inside. The cave was narrow at first, but as he moved deeper, it widened. The walls were rough, covered with marks that looked like carvings. He stopped and looked closely. The carvings showed shapes of people, animals, and what seemed like boats. They were old, maybe made by people who lived here long ago. Ravi's heart beat faster. This was proof that the island had a story. He kept walking until he reached the back of the cave. There he found a few broken clay pots and a piece of cloth that had turned brown with age. He picked up one pot and saw it was filled with shells. Maybe it had once been used for rituals or trade. Ravi smiled slightly. It felt strange but amazing to think someone else had once lived here and survived, just like him. When he came out of the cave, the sunlight hurt his eyes for a moment. He sat down outside, breathing deeply. The island was not just a piece of land. It held secrets of people who might have faced the same challenges he was facing now. He returned to his shelter before sunset, carrying fruit and his thoughts about the cave. That night, as he sat near his small fire, he thought about those carvings. Who were those people? Why had they left the island? Or had something happened to them? He didn't know, but the mystery gave him energy. He wanted to learn more. The next morning, he woke up hungry. He roasted some fruit and ate slowly, saving some for later. Then he went toward the beach to check the horizon again. The sea was calm. Suddenly, his eyes caught a flash in the distance, something shining far away. It looked like metal reflecting sunlight. His heart jumped. Could it be a ship? He waved his hands, shouting as loud as he could. He even lit his signal fire again, hoping the smoke would rise high. But after a few minutes, the light disappeared. It was either a wave or a trick of sunlight. Disappointment filled him, but he reminded himself not to lose hope. He spent the rest of the morning improving his shelter. He used long sticks to make a stronger frame and covered it with layers of leaves. He also made a wall of stones on one side to block the wind. His small home now looked safer. He smiled proudly when he finished. In the afternoon, he decided to return to the stone circle near the cliff. He carried his knife and a piece of rope. When he reached there, he studied the rocks more closely. The stones were arranged in a perfect circle, with a flat one in the middle. It almost looked like a table. Around it were marks in the ground that looked too even to be random. He cleared some dirt and found pieces of wood underneath. Maybe it was once a fire pit. He imagined people sitting there long ago, maybe watching the stars or praying to something. The idea gave him both comfort and curiosity. He felt connected to those unknown people, as if they were guiding him to survive. While searching around, Ravi noticed something shining near the edge of the cliff. He moved closer carefully and saw an old metal box half buried in sand and stones. He pulled it out and opened it. Inside, he found a few things: a broken compass, a small piece of mirror, and a plastic bottle cap. These things were not ancient, they were modern. That meant someone had been on this island in recent years. Ravi's mind filled with questions. Who were they? Where did they go? Did they leave the island, or did something happen to them? He looked around, feeling a strange chill. The island suddenly felt less empty, as if unseen eyes were watching him. He quickly gathered the items and went back toward his shelter before dark. That night he sat quietly near the fire. The waves were calm, but the forest was full of sounds: crickets, frogs, and the rustle of wind in leaves. The stars shone brightly above, and the moonlight made the sea sparkle. Yet something inside him felt uneasy. The carvings, the stone circle, and the box all pointed to a mystery. He turned the small mirror in his hand, watching the firelight bounce off it. Maybe he could use it as a signal if a plane or ship passed by. He placed it carefully beside him and lay down. Sleep came slowly. He dreamed of old people living on the island, fishing, making fire, and then suddenly vanishing into the forest. The next morning, he woke up sweating. The dream had felt real. He decided to go back to the cave and draw the carvings on the ground near his shelter, so he could remember them. He spent hours copying the shapes of boats and figures with a stick. While doing that, he noticed something else in the drawings. One figure looked like it was pointing toward the sea, while another looked like a man standing beside a large rock. Ravi stood up and looked around. Was it a map? Could those carvings be showing something hidden? Maybe something that could help him? The idea excited him. He decided to follow the directions shown in the drawing. As the sun reached the top of the sky, he packed his knife, rope, and mirror and started walking again. He followed the direction of the carving, toward the rocky side of the island where the waves hit hard. The path was rough and sharp rocks cut his feet, but he kept moving. Finally, he reached a huge rock near the shore. It looked like the one in the carving. He searched around it carefully. The waves crashed loudly, spraying water over him. Then, behind the rock, he noticed a small hole covered by seaweed. It looked like the entrance to another cave, smaller than the first one. He leaned down to look inside, but it was too dark to see. The sound of the sea filled his ears. His heart beat fast. He knew this place might hide answers and new dangers. But Ravi had come too far to stop now. He took a deep breath, gripped his knife, and stepped into the darkness to discover what secrets the island was keeping. The waves crashed against the rocks as Ravi stood at the entrance of the small dark cave. The air smelled of salt and wet stone. He hesitated for a moment, holding his stick with a piece of dry grass tied to the end. He lit it with his lighter, and a small flame flickered to life. The light shone weakly into the narrow space, showing damp walls and dripping water. Ravi took a deep breath and stepped inside. The floor was slippery and the sound of his footsteps echoed softly. The cave grew darker as he went deeper. He tried to stay calm, focusing on every step. The sound of the sea slowly faded behind him, replaced by the steady drop of water falling from the ceiling. After a few minutes, the tunnel widened into a small chamber. The flame revealed strange shapes on the walls. They were not carvings like before, but drawings made with charcoal or black stone. They showed people with torches standing near a fire. There were also boats and fish and something that looked like a big storm. Ravi moved closer, trying to understand. The drawings told a story, maybe about people who had lived here long ago and faced the same wild weather he had faced. One picture showed people building something tall near the cliff. Another showed them leaving the island in small boats. He wondered if those people had left because of the storms. As he turned to leave, his foot hit something hard. He bent down and brushed away the sand. It was a metal box, smaller than the one he had found earlier. He pulled it out carefully and opened it. Inside were some wet papers, a few rusted nails, and a glass bottle with a note inside. His heart beat faster. The note was old, the paper yellow, but he could still read a few words. It said, "To whoever finds this, we were stranded here after the storm. We tried to survive. If you find this, know that help might come only if you can signal it." The letter ended there. Ravi stared at it for a long time. Someone had been here before him, maybe many years ago, and they had faced the same situation. He felt both sad and hopeful. Sad for those who might not have survived, and hopeful because they had believed in help coming someday. He put the note carefully back inside the box and took it with him. When he came out of the cave, the bright sunlight hurt his eyes. He stood for a while, letting the warm air dry his damp clothes. The sea glittered like silver, calm and endless. The island felt quiet again, but to Ravi it no longer felt empty. It was full of hidden stories. He returned to his shelter before sunset. He sat near his fire, turning the small bottle in his hand. He thought about the people who wrote that note. Did they ever get rescued, or had the island taken them forever? He could not know, but he promised himself that he would not give up. He would survive and leave this island alive. The next morning, Ravi woke up feeling stronger. His body had become used to the hard ground and simple food. He ate some roasted fruit and drank water from the stream. Then he decided to improve his shelter further. He built a small fence of branches around it to keep animals away. He also made a stronger roof using layers of palm leaves tied with vines. When he was done, he felt proud. It looked like a real hut now, small but safe. He smiled and whispered, "Now I have a home." Later, he climbed up the hill again to watch the horizon. From there, he could see everything, the forest, the beach, and the wide sea. He used his small mirror to reflect sunlight toward the water, hoping that a passing ship or plane might notice the flashes. He did it for several minutes every day. It became his routine. Days passed slowly. Ravi counted them by making marks on a rock near his shelter. Each day he survived felt like a small victory. He had food, water, fire, and shelter. But deep inside, he still wanted to leave. The island was beautiful, but it was also a lonely cage. One afternoon, while searching for dry wood near the other side of the forest, he found something new. It was an old campfire site. There were burnt sticks, pieces of rope, and a rusted cooking pot. Someone had clearly lived there. Ravi's heart raced. Could it be the camp of the people who wrote the note? He looked around carefully. Near the site, he saw footprints, but they were old, almost washed away by rain. Still, they proved that he was not the first person here. He searched the area and found a piece of cloth stuck in a branch. It was part of a shirt, faded and torn. He kept it, thinking it might be useful as a flag or signal. When he returned to his shelter, the sky was turning orange. The sea breeze carried a soft smell of salt and flowers. He sat near the fire, holding the piece of cloth. It made him think of people, of voices, laughter, and life. He had not heard another human voice in many days, and the silence felt heavy. That night, while lying inside his hut, he listened to the sound of the wind. Suddenly, he heard something unusual, a deep thumping noise far away. He sat up quickly, his heart beating fast. It sounded like the engine of a boat. He rushed out and ran toward the beach. The sound came from the distance, mixed with the sound of waves. He waved his arms and shouted. He lit his signal fire again, feeding it with dry branches. Flames rose high and smoke climbed into the sky. He grabbed his mirror and reflected light toward the sea again and again. For a moment, it seemed like the sound grew louder. Ravi's eyes filled with tears of hope. But then the sound slowly faded. The sea returned to silence. The boat, if there had been one, was gone. He sank to his knees on the sand, tired and heartbroken. He had come so close to being saved. The smoke still rose above him, disappearing into the blue sky, but after a few minutes he wiped his eyes and stood up. "No," he said softly. "I will not give up." He looked around, breathing hard. The island had tested him again, and he would not fail. The next day he began to prepare better signals. He collected big pieces of wood and arranged them on the beach to form large letters spelling help. He made sure they were visible from the air. He also tied the torn piece of cloth to a tall stick and placed it near the shore as a flag. Then he returned to the cave and carefully placed the note and bottle on a dry rock. If he ever left, or if someone came after him, they would know what had happened here. The days passed slowly again. The weather changed often, sometimes sunny, sometimes stormy. Ravi learned how to read the clouds and wind. He became skilled at finding food and making fire even when everything was wet. The island had become his teacher. One evening, while sitting near the fire, he saw something strange far out at sea, a dark line moving slowly against the golden sunset. He stood up, eyes wide. It looked like a ship. His hands shook as he picked up the mirror and flashed it toward the light. He waited, holding his breath. The ship seemed far away, but it was real. He could see its shape clearly now. He ran to a signal fire, adding dry leaves to make more smoke. He waved his arms and shouted again and again. Minutes passed like hours. Then suddenly the ship turned slightly. It was moving toward the island. Ravi's heart raced faster than ever before. He felt tears fill his eyes, but this time they were tears of joy. He knew the island had tested him in every way. Hunger, fear, loneliness, but now, at last, his strength and patience were being rewarded. As the ship came closer, the setting sun painted the sky red and gold. Ravi stood on the beach, waving his flag high, his heart full of hope. He had survived the storm, the hunger, the fear, and the silence. The lost island had tried to break him, but instead it had made him stronger. The rescue was near, but his story was not yet over. The golden sun hung low over the sea, turning the waves orange and red. Ravi stood on the beach with the wind brushing against his face, staring at the dark shape of the ship moving closer. His heart beat fast, and his hands trembled. For the first time in many days, he felt something strong inside him. Hope that was real, not just a dream. He kept waving the cloth tied to his stick, shouting even though his voice was weak. He added more leaves to the fire, and black smoke rose high into the evening sky. He waved again, his arms tired but full of energy from excitement. The ship moved slowly, maybe cautious of the rocks under the water. Ravi prayed silently that they had seen him. Then he saw something that made him gasp. A small boat was being lowered into the water from the ship's side. His knees felt weak. He fell to the sand for a moment, covering his face with his hands. He whispered, "They saw me. They really saw me." He stood up quickly and began running along the beach, looking for a clear area where the rescue boat could come ashore safely. The tide was coming in, and the waves crashed with power, but he didn't care. He found a flat section where the sand stretched wide and free of rocks. He stood there, waving his stick high and calling out. Minutes later, He saw 3 people in the rescue boat rowing toward him. The sight made his chest tighten with emotion. They were still far, but he could hear the sound of the oars hitting the water. Tears rolled down his cheeks, and he smiled for the first time in weeks, a real smile, filled with life. When the boat reached the shore, one man jumped out first. He wore a blue jacket and a hat, and he looked surprised to see Ravi. The man shouted, "Hey, are you alone here?" Ravi nodded, his throat dry and voice weak. "Yes, I am alone. Please, help." The men helped him into the boat. Ravi's legs shook as he sat down. The world around him blurred with emotion. As they pushed the boat back into the sea, he looked at the island one last time. The trees moved in the wind, and the waves sparkled in the sunlight. It was the place that had almost broken him, but also the place that had taught him to fight to live and to believe in himself. When they reached the ship, the crew helped him climb aboard. They gave him water first, then a blanket and some food. Ravi drank slowly, the cold water feeling like life returning to him. He ate small pieces of bread and fruit, feeling tears in his eyes again. The taste of real food after so long felt like a miracle. One of the rescuers, a kind man named Rohan, sat beside him. "How long were you on that island?" he asked gently. Ravi looked at the horizon and said softly, "I stopped counting after the second week. Maybe 3 or 4 weeks, maybe more. Every day felt the same." Rohan nodded slowly. "You're lucky we saw your signal. We changed our route because of the storm last night. Otherwise, we might have missed you." Ravi closed his eyes and whispered, "Maybe it was fate." The crew gave him warm clothes and a small cabin to rest. As the ship sailed away, Ravi stood by the window, watching the island fade into the distance. It grew smaller and smaller, until it became only a shadow against the sea. He pressed his hand against the glass and whispered, "Thank you for teaching me how to survive." Over the next few days, Ravi slowly regained his strength. His hands were rough, his skin tanned, and his beard had grown thick, but his eyes were brighter than ever. He spent hours talking with the crew, telling them how he survived, how he built his shelter, made fire, and found food. They listened with wide eyes, impressed and moved by his story. "You're stronger than most people I know," one of them said. Ravi smiled gently. "The island made me strong. It tested me every day. But I learned something. Humans are tougher than they think. As long as we don't give up, we can face anything." When the ship finally reached the harbor, the morning sky was clear. People on the dock stared in surprise as Ravi stepped off, wearing a borrowed jacket and carrying a small bag given by the crew. He looked around, breathing in the air of the world he had almost lost. Cars moved, people talked, and everything felt loud and alive. A man from the local rescue office came forward and shook his hand. "You are the hiker who went missing, right? Everyone thought you were gone. We searched for you but found nothing." Ravi nodded quietly. "The storm pushed me far away. I ended up on that island. I thought I would die there." The man smiled kindly. "You didn't. You fought and survived. That's something few could do." Ravi thanked him and walked away slowly. He felt strange being around people again. The noise, the smell, the voices, everything felt too much. But deep inside, he also felt grateful. He was alive. In the days that followed, Ravi rested at a small guest house near the harbor. Reporters came to talk to him, wanting to know his story. But Ravi kept it simple. He told them about the storm, the island, the hunger, and the fire. But he didn't tell everything. Some parts, he felt, were only for him and the island to share. At night, he often dreamed of the island. He saw the trees, the cave, the drawings on the wall, and the fire burning under the stars. Sometimes he woke up and looked out the window at the calm sea. He missed the sound of the waves and the silence of the forest. One evening, he went back to the harbor to watch the sunset. The sky turned golden, just like the evening when the ship had found him. He sat there for a long time thinking. Then he opened a small notebook and began to write. He wrote about every day he spent there, the fear, the strength, the lessons. He wrote about the cave and the message in the bottle. He wanted people to know that even in the hardest places, hope can still live. When he finished writing, He looked at the horizon and said softly, "The island gave me a new life. I will not waste it." Months later, Ravi started giving small talks at hiking clubs and schools. He told young people about his experience, how important it was to stay calm in danger, to respect nature, and to never give up hope. He brought the same bottle he had found in the cave and showed it to everyone. "This message was left by someone long before me," he said one day during a talk. "Maybe they didn't survive, but their words helped me. So I want to do the same, to leave my own message for someone else." His story inspired many. People began calling him the man who lived the impossible, but Ravi always said, "I didn't do anything impossible. I just refused to give up." Years later, Ravi sometimes returned to the sea, standing on the shore and watching the endless water. He never found the island again, even though he searched its location on maps. It was as if it had disappeared, but he didn't mind. In his heart, the island would always be there, the place that tested his courage and showed him what it truly meant to be alive. As the sun went down, painting the sky orange and red, Ravi smiled and whispered, "No food, no shelter, no help. But I had something stronger, the will to survive." He walked away from the shore, his steps light, his spirit free. He knew that no matter where life took him, a part of that island would always live within him. A memory of strength, hope, and the human heart that never stops fighting to live. And so the man who was once lost was never truly lost again.